Whether some fans agree or not, at least there's some peace finally in Ann Arbor. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, talking Michigan. We got Clayton Safey on the line from the Wolverine Mag on Rivals. Clayton, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Good to have you back, as always, to break down the Wolverines, and the ongoing has finally come to an end in regards to whether Jim Harbaugh was going to jump to the NFL, whether he was going to accept a long-standing contract extension that had been offered reportedly quite some time ago. So he stays at Michigan. Give us the terms of the contract and what do you think it means?
Yeah. So basically, I'll start by saying this, that there's finally resolution. Like you said, I think the fan base is kind of torn. You know, some people are, hey, let's move in a different direction. We've seen what this program is like under Jim Harbaugh. Some people are, we want to see what he can do. He's done some good things. Continue this. They've seen some coaching searches go awry in the past. You see, look no further than Rich Rodriguez or Brady Hoke. But I think everybody was united in the fact that they just wanted something to happen in fast. Finally did last Friday with Jim Harbaugh signing the contract extension. But yeah, the terms are interesting. So he was set to make, his regular salary this next season at $8 million. He, accepted the extension, but the terms are interesting because it's a 4-year extension, had 1 year left. So he's here through, the next 5 years through 2025. The base salary is about $4 million and it goes up a little bit each year, but it's highly incentivized. So it's kind of you've seen a couple programs around the country do this in the last 5 or so years where you're not just paying a huge sum to a coach and not getting the results you want, and then you pay a huge buyout. You just saw Auburn pay a huge buyout. You just saw Texas pay a huge buyout. So it's highly incentivized. He has to win the Big Ten, win the division, make a bowl game, make a New Year's Six bowl game, make the college football playoff, win the national championship if he wants to get back to that number, which is right near $8 million. And, as far as what the holdup was, and I guess I was about to make this point that he basically is, he could have made the $8 million this year, but the offer or whatever he wanted to do or whatever he accepted is that they actually restructured this final year of his original contract. And then, it's kind of the same thing moving forward. But as far as what the holdup was, we had heard that there was, discussions just before Christmas between Ward Manuel, Michigan's athletic director, and Jim Harbaugh on what's going to happen. And they kind of went through discussions. There was a contract offer on the table. For whatever reason, it didn't seem to be as urgent for these guys that, as it was for the Michigan fan base. But they got through signing day, and we kind of recapped that about a month ago, that with the really good class. So it didn't really impact that as much. And, but at the same time, you're looking forward towards, recruiting never sleeps. And you're looking forward towards the next year where things were kind of on a standstill. And some recruits were saying there's just so much uncertainty. We're not hearing from them as much. And, you kind of heard from the Michigan coaches side of things that we're just kind of pumping the brakes a little bit till everything gets figured out. It finally has. We can talk about the defensive coordinator. It looks like they're going to hire as well going forward. And it's going to be a different staff than this past year. And I think Jim Harbaugh acknowledged, and he said it in his statement when he signed his contract, that there are challenges ahead. This is kind of this is Jim Harbaugh 2.0 at Michigan almost. It kind of feels like a new era coming in. Can he reinvent himself? Can he, switch some of the things around that went awry this past year?
So the most important aspect of this seems to be exactly what you're talking about in regards to retaining the talent that was first recruited and committed to the team and then signed on National Signing Day, which by all accounts, based on exactly what you said, they didn't see too many flips. And they were able to retain one of the top 10 to 15 classes in the nation. So that was good. The one thing that came to mind for me when we talked about a number of times there being a contract extension out there, at some point in the season, the administration made that decision. Jim Harbaugh was obviously weighing his NFL options and seeing how that would possibly play out versus accepting this contract extension. I can't think that he had to mull over the contract extension for that long if he knew it was either going to be Michigan or bust. He was certainly waiting for the NFL season to see what was possibly out there for him.
Yeah. I'll say this on that, not to interrupt you, Mark, but there were so many conflicting reports, and to be completely honest, We've talked about this before, how Jim Harbaugh, he doesn't really let anything leak from his camp. The Michigan Athletic Department and Ward Manual is very tight-lipped as well. So it was very hard to, figure out, I guess, which sources are reliable, where they're getting their information. And I will say this, that the timeline looked like he was weighing more NFL options, and he very well might have been, especially internally or with his family, or, what do we want to do? It was at a crossroads, basically. Do I want to continue at Michigan long term, or do I want to seek NFL options? But there was really no indication, to be completely honest, that he was actually reaching out to teams, or he doesn't have an agent, or and I think that would have been the Ian Rappaports and the Adam Schefters of the world would have been reporting on that, and that seems to be in line. The fact that they didn't report on that seems to be in line with what we had heard, that he was, working on hiring a new defensive coordinator. He was recruiting over the holidays. So all indications point to that, he was still planning on being the coach in choosing Michigan. And then he ended up doing that. The timeline was weird. And do we have all the details on why it played out that way? No. But, there's certainly a chance that he was weighing the NFL options too.
Yeah, the timeline just added up to me as being able to weigh the options from the recruiting standpoint. That why wouldn't you sign and give that assurance to the guys that you're chasing? Plus, from the timeline of trying to assemble a staff and trying to fill some of the gaps, and especially at the defensive coordinator position. But then again, maybe not. Maybe it just took him that long to nail down that contract extension and get to a place where he felt good about it, and he and his family as well. Got Clayton Safety on the line from the Wolverine Mag on Rivals here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Hit that bell for the notifications once you have subscribed. That way you know when we're going live, which is each and every day, sometimes multiple times per day. So before we move on to the addition to the staff there, Clayton, you wonder what the standard's going to be in regards to, even though the contract extension goes all the way out to 2025, that what the standard is for keeping him, because basically every coach is on a 1-year contract to a certain extent, and with all the incentivized elements of this, he's really on a 1-year contract. And when they would possibly say, hey, this is not good enough, and if he continues on the 9-3 path, whether that is going to be deemed good enough.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention the buyout, and that was an oversight by me. So they lowered the buyout significantly on his contract. I think before it was just, his contract, basically. Like, the buyout was the next year on the contract. So, if he was fired at the end of this season, it would have been the $8 million that he was owed for the next year. Now it's down to $4 million. This next year, it'll go down to 3, and then 2, and then 1, and then 0 after that. So it's not just you get $4 million, and if you don't meet the incentives, you just get your $4 million. It's, if you don't meet those incentives, basically, like, they're planning on him hitting some incentives. Otherwise, he's going to be shown the door. And, that's kind of the standard, I think. When you see that with the fact that there were a lot of people in an uproar, a little bit about what's happened the last couple of years, especially this past year with the 2-4 season with the shortened year. So yeah, the buyout is a huge aspect of this. They lowered it. So there's more flexibility for both sides, and they lowered his buyout as well, where if he wanted to leave at any point, then he wouldn't have to pay as much. And I'll say this too, I think they're kind of planning on, this kind of a wait and see thing. If he, let's say next year, for a hypothetical, this probably won't happen, right? But let's say they win the national championship next year. They're going to restructure anyway. So this deal is kind of, here's what we have for the time being. Go out and hit your incentives, and we'll restructure, and we'll give you the biggest deal again of all time. So that's basically, the buyout thing is huge. This is not it's long-term on paper, but things need to be hit. Results need to be a lot higher than they were the past season if he wants to continue to be here.
Jim Harbaugh's success is going to largely ride on his coaching staff, and the coordinators head up that list. Obviously, Josh Gaddis still in play as the offensive coordinator as we speak. Defensive coordinator was wide open with Don Brown being dismissed, and you got some news on that, which is an obvious connection to the family ties there in Baltimore.
Yeah, so he's eyeing Mike McDonald, the Ravens linebacker coach, as the new defensive coordinator, we believe that could be a co-defensive coordinator spot, and he could look to, kind of go that route that they haven't done under Jim Harbaugh with the two defensive coordinators, one kind of running the show and the other guy with a title on there and, having some added responsibility. But they're waiting to make that official until after the Ravens are out of the playoffs. Obviously, they play next week, and they just got a big win over Tennessee this past weekend. So, that's kind of tight-lipped for now. But yeah, it's John Harbaugh's guy. I'm sure he got the recommendation from him. He's 33 years old. Didn't play college football, didn't play pro football, so he kind of got a jump start in the coaching realm. And I've talked to a writer from Georgia. I've talked to some guys, some writers in Baltimore, just to try to gather more information on him, and got an article coming out actually this afternoon on thewolverine.com with some intel on, their thoughts on the hire, kind of what his responsibilities have been and things like that. Highly regarded, apparently, he engages well with the players, and has kind of risen his way up. This is kind of the trend you see it in the NFL with the guys like Sean McVay. He was the first one, right? And then all the young guys that had ever had a cup of coffee with him were getting hired as offensive coordinators or head coaches. Cliff Kingsbury, all these guys, Matt LaFleur. You don't see it as much on the defensive side, where you get this rising star who's a good, defensive mind. Like I said, young, but has been a position coach in the NFL for a few years. So now, does that mean that this is a great hire? That's going to remain to be seen. He went with kind of the younger route, the unproven route with Josh Gaddis, the offensive coordinator, a couple of years ago. Hasn't worked out exactly how they wanted it to. They switched to the spread offense, but that wasn't the only goal. They wanted to have a really productive offense, and they've been worse statistically the last 2 years than they were overall in 2018, when they were kind of mixed between the pro style West Coast and spread and all that. So unproven hire. We'll see how he is. All accounts, he's a good coach. Is he a good coordinator? All accounts, Josh Gaddis is a very good wide receivers coach. Is he a good offensive coordinator? I think he still has a lot to prove. Same thing will be the case with Mike McDonald. But on the surface, I like a guy like that coming in and being on the staff if you're Michigan. And we'll see exactly, what if they bring in a more proven guy with him or whatever. But in terms of staff shakeup, we're also hearing that they're looking to make some changes on the offensive side of the ball. So Ben McDaniels, the brother of Josh McDaniels, the Patriots offensive coordinator, has been the quarterback's coach the last 2 years. He is not going to be retained. And Jim Harbaugh might actually coach the quarterbacks on his own this year. And, they might look to possibly add an offensive coordinator. All those options are on the table. The timeline right now, like we've talked about, has been a little delayed because they had the whole contract situation to work out. But here we are. I think things are going to start to move a little more fast and furious over the next 14 days here. And news will start to pick up on exactly what Jim Harbaugh's staff is going to look like going forward.
Clayton, there was talk near the end of the season that Josh Gaddis might not be retained, but I got to think at this point, most of those positions have been filled across the country. It's we've separated ourselves from the season quite a bit. That he's pretty much safe in his spot.
Yeah, well, he's safe, I'd say, on the staff, and by the way, he's making, I think, like $1 million a year. So, whether or not, let's say he gets demoted, hypothetically, to just wide receivers coach or a co-offensive coordinator or whatever. Would that be insulting enough to go look somewhere else where you're probably not going to get $1 million a year and a coordinator title? I don't know. For me, I would take the $1 million, and continue to, to coach at Michigan. But at the same time, crazier things have happened. Josh Gaddis was actually hired as the offensive coordinator a couple of years ago, back in January, when Michigan already had an offensive coordinator. So this would not be beyond, the way Jim Harbaugh operates to just hire an offensive coordinator when you already have one. And then Pep Hamilton then ended up leaving a couple weeks later and moving on. He's now the quarterback's coach for the Chargers. But so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the staff looks like. I assume Josh Gaddis will be continuing to coach at Michigan. He's under contract. There's a few coaches that actually their contracts expired yesterday. So they can either now re-sign, negotiate, whatever, move on. He was not one of them. So he's safe, at least, to be on the staff. And it seems like that is the direction they're going to go. But there's been talks of adding more offensive coaches, including a coordinator. So that wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. But yes, in terms of Josh Gaddis, I would assume that he continues to stay at Michigan here.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please smash the like button if you enjoy what we do here in providing college football analysis, discussion, debate, and analysis every day. Got Clayton Safey on the line from the Wolverine Mag. It's the Wolverine.com on Rivals. So check them out right there. Again, an article just released. Check it out on the potential defensive coordinator hire, Mike McDonald from the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, subscribe here. We talk college football every day. Hit that bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live and dropping new videos. Now that Harbaugh's in place, the recruits know who their head coach is going to be. That makes recruiting easier. Some possible flips out there. It's always nice one to steal one from Sparty as well.
Yeah, so they're looking at, this has been a kid, Raeshawn Benny, who is a top 100 recruit. He's a defensive tackle out of Oak Park, which is just right outside of Detroit. He was considered a Michigan lean for a long, long time. And then connected well with the new coaching staff at Michigan State. Mel Tucker and his guys there really came after him and prioritized him. Michigan State beats Michigan unexpectedly. And then a few weeks later, he chooses Michigan State. Now, he also, had always said that he would continue the recruiting process after he committed somewhere and just wanted to sign on the late signing day in February. He actually originally wanted to decide then and announce it, probably on some sort of national scale at that point. But he realized they're probably not going to be able to take visits, until, these recruits will never be able to take visits. You hope, the 2022 kids will be able to take them next fall. But so he chose Michigan State, left the door open. Michigan is continuing to contact him. And, with the Jim Harbaugh contract situation resolved, that gives Michigan a huge shot at being able to flip him. This is a kid that still is receptive to the Michigan coaches, really likes Jim Harbaugh, who has a good relationship with him. So that's certainly one to keep an eye on. And yeah, it'd be a big win because, Mel Tucker has been known as a plus recruiter going back to his days at Georgia, started to recruit pretty well at Colorado when he was there for 1 year as the head coach. And then he comes in and takes a big recruit from, Michigan. Everyone kind of considered that Michigan the leader in that recruitment. You'd love to take one back, fire one back over their bow and get a win if you're Michigan. But, I wouldn't bet necessarily on that when a kid's committed elsewhere. But as we know, until these kids sign, anything can happen. Until, it's the same thing. I was talking to a kid over the weekend who said, yeah, Jim Harbaugh signed just like the rest of us did, and it is kind of similar in that way. So until these guys actually sign, until Jim Harbaugh signed, we had no clue what was going to happen. Until a kid like Raeshawn Benny signs, we also have no clue. So Michigan's still pushing there and has a decent shot, I think, at being able to land him.
Always love getting the Michigan insight and information from Clayton Safey. You can join him on the Wolverine.com. That's the Wolverine Mag. So it's Wolverine, thewolverine.com, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thewolverine.com on Rivals, the platform that's an industry standard. Clayton, we appreciate you stopping by as always, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. We'll do it again soon.